All right, welcome everybody. Spartans Community TV, back in action in a podcast format. I'm going to say by popular demand, actually. Whether we created that demand in our own heads or whether there is actually popular demand, yet to be determined. I'm Russell Harrison. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Spartans Boxing Club. Joining me today is Dr. Paul Englert, who is Chief Psychologist and Head of Spartans Mind. Welcome, Paul.
Welcome.
Yes. Hey, a professional setup here
down
in the Heritage Heartland area of Duchat Road.
It's lovely. It's lovely. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's probably worthwhile that we reintroduce Spartans Community TV as a podcast. So for anybody that was with us throughout the pandemic, one of the things that Spartans Boxing Club did that we were really proud of is we started the concept of Spartans Community TV, and that was really trying to bring people together, people that were in the existing Spartans network, or but also people that weren't. And obviously, during the pandemic, people were quite disconnected and everything like that. And community and connection being an important part of our business, we really just wanted to try and maintain and keep people together. And the format of that, you can check it out on YouTube under the Spartans Boxing Club channel. The format of that was we brought together interesting people from around the globe, athletes, business people, celebrities, people who had interesting stories to tell. And we just got together on a weekly Zoom and we just shared stories, right? And it was fantastic because we kept everybody together. It proved to be really popular and there were some great stories that come out of it. We are now, I think it's pretty safe to say, post-pandemic. And so we've decided to bring that back with the idea that we still know that there's a whole heap of really interesting people, or probably more interesting people around the Spartans network globally now. And so we wanted to bring this back and share interesting stories. And so that's what brings you and I here together today.
Sure.
Yeah. So without further ado, let me just formally introduce Dr. Paul. We're going to talk today through Dr. Paul's background. Dr. Paul is a PhD in organizational psychology. He is a registered psychologist here in Singapore, and he is also an associate lecturer at NTU and at SUSS. We're really privileged to have Paul here for Spartans Community TV, but also we're especially privileged to have him on board with Spartans as our chief psychologist and the person who's leading the charge with Spartans Mind. And that's what we're going to talk to you guys about today, is a little bit about Dr. Paul's background, but also about Spartans Mind and the whole, I guess, field of mental health and physical wellness. So formally, welcome, Paul.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a real privilege to be involved. I think that Spartans is breaking a whole lot of new ground with the tie between fitness and mental health. As a psychologist, we've known the need for fitness to be part of any treatment program, but it's never really been formalized. And gyms and fitness centers sort of brush over the issue, but no one has really made it central to their offering. And I think Spartans is, to my knowledge, the first gym to really put it as a centerpiece on what they offer, and to think about, well, how do we integrate that without moving away from our core business?
Yeah.
And what sort of services can we offer the community that can fit into what Spartans Mind hopes to be? So it's a real privilege to be involved.
Awesome. So before we get to probably that end of the conversation, why don't we do what most good podcasts do when they've got interesting people on, and why don't we just ask for you just to give us a little bit of background professionally and sort of how you got involved in the sort of mental health and wellness space.
Sure.
Probably back to a younger Paul with longer hair.
Yeah, for sure. So the first business I ever had was in personal training, and I've always been heavily involved with fitness. When I left school, I actually I was starting down the route of the apprenticeship as a golf professional. So soon realised that was going to end in tears. So that's when I went back to university, did psychology. Was looking at different areas of psychology, as you do, everything from clinical to organisational to sports, high performance, and really settled on the high performance and organisational psychology field, and really focused on that field. But from a high performance area, and so the crossover with sport was always there. Maintained myself actively. I was an active judoka right up until I just got too old to land on my shoulder again, and continued the physio appointments and so on and so forth. And I think that's ultimately what brought me to boxing. I think I enjoy martial arts. I enjoy the physical aspect of it. I enjoy the challenge aspect of it. I enjoy the growth aspect and the progression of it. Boxing, despite what some people may think, is actually a lot easier on the body. A lot easier on the body, certainly, than judo ever was. And with Spartans, I could control my entry into it. It's not like I walked into the gym and was sparring day one.
Yep.
You've got these classes which you can do to build up your technique. I could get my fitness up to a certain level. We created a little, what we called the Uncles Fight Club, which is like this old group of us.
We don't use the word old, though, do we? Seasoned,
yeah. And we'd have some gentle rounds with each other. There's the Sunday classes where you can do some stuff, and it's just a great place to be in terms of someone who's in their 50s and starting to think about, okay, I want to stay active, I want to stay competitive.
Yep.
I want to do something that keeps me fresh, and boxing does that.
Yep, awesome. I agree. I just want to jump back. I've got a couple of questions on the earlier days.
Yep.
So one, and I don't know if people know this or not. So I studied psychology at uni with the ambition of, when I started that, I thought I wanted to be a psychologist. So my first question to all of the budding psychologists out there is, how on earth did you stick to the years and years of schooling?
Yeah.
That's the first one.
I think it's very much about living in the present and just day by day. Like, you don't think about, if I think that it was 10 years ultimately, when you talk about the undergraduate, then you're doing your first year of your postgraduate, then your PhD, which I did part-time, the whole thing's, a 10-year journey. If you'd started with that idea in mind, you'd give up pretty fast. But, as we know from psychology, it's important to have distal and proximal goals. And you just move through the goals at a slow and regular pace, and then you end up at a certain place. And that's essentially what happened. So I just moved through the goals at a regular pace, and, that just happened. And with the PhD, I was doing that part-time, which helped. I also had a company which I'd started at that time that's recently been acquired. And so there was a lot of other things going on which allowed me to do it.
Advice I wish I got, how many years ago now? 22 years ago. So for all of the youngsters out there, thank me later. So I guess that's the first one. And the second one is, because I know a little bit about your background. Paul and I have become very good friends over the past few years, usually over a couple of drinks. I know that your earlier involvement, at least from a professional standpoint, was in and around juvenile justice, and that sort of an area.
Yep.
Do you want to just give us a little bit of an overview of that?
So when I started, I originally, and this is when I was doing a lot of my undergraduate work, I didn't want to be an organizational psychologist. That came much later. I was more interested in working with youth at risk. Originally, it was sort of the Silence of the Lambs trip and going down that sort of path. But yeah, it ultimately became, I was working with youth at risk. And in New Zealand, we have this thing called a family group conference, which is essentially for young offenders rather than them going to court. You have more of it's a less of an adversarial system, more of the offender coming to terms with what they've done, sitting with the victim, together with the victim, deciding what is going to be a suitable punishment. Not everybody goes down that track, but I would be there to advocate for both sides, but obviously do a lot of stuff for youth at risk. And then I also worked with some pretty hard-nosed offenders, some that ended up doing long sentences, and that was really where I cut my teeth as a psychologist. And I've kept all of those lessons with me right the way through.
Yeah. And I think that's probably, I guess, kind of a good place to introduce, I guess, how we started to connect on stuff that was a little bit more than boxing. So really that sort of youth at risk space. And I'll just talk quickly about sort of, I guess, what we at Spartans we've done over the years in that space. So going back to almost the beginning of when Spartans was set up, we saw that boxing gyms were synonymous with some sort of community outreach. Not Spartans, boxing gyms around the world, right? There's so many stories of how boxing gyms have helped kids that are in dire and not so dire circumstances, right? But that youth at risk space is somewhere where boxing gyms have always had an impact. So we started doing programs a number of years ago in that space, quite successfully here in Singapore with some help of some pretty amazing individuals, and I guess a shout out to Naresh at Impart. We'll talk about him in a little while, but he's been fundamental to all of this as well. And so those youth programs were really about trying to do what boxing gyms have done for kids, putting it in more formalized programs. But of course, what we were doing a number of years ago was really just trying to take kids who were involved in some sort of a youth program and giving a boxing spin to it. And that's really where you and I started talking about, I guess, the work that you've done and a role that boxing gyms can play in that. And that's, I guess, where this whole concept of Spartans Mind and what we're sort of working towards now, that sort of came about. So other than the fact that, and I'll say this a few times, it was over a few drinks, over a period of time, that youth at risk space and where you'd cut your teeth earlier, it's kind of gone full circle, and that's sort of where we end up now.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe you just want to give a little bit of an insight in terms of, I guess now what Spartans Mind is, that it's sort of come from there.
Sure. So we, as Russ mentioned, we worked with Naresh. I worked with Naresh independently. Yeah. And we ran some youth programs using what was a big part of my PhD, this idea of future selves, future visions that people have for themselves, how they work towards those goals, these types of things. And the boxing component of that was then integrated into a program, and as Russ said, it's almost quintessential for boxing gyms to play this role in the community. And we've looked at that as one of our arms to Spartans Mind. We've looked at Spartans Mind from 3 different perspectives. We've recognized that there is a place for optimization, that people want to optimize their mental health, and they don't really know how to. They know what it means, they know when they feel it, but how do they get there? So what we've done is look for some way of quantifying some of the core markers around mental health, focus, energy, and calmness, and worked with a developer here who's got a pretty nifty little invention that enables us to do that, and then has training aligned to that. So this is one arm, the optimization arm of Spartans Mind, which is going to be available to all members probably in 2023. We looked at the strengthen arm, which is the bit that we're talking about here, working with youth, working also with ex-offenders, getting them ready to integrate back into the community. And we looked at the a third arm, which is repair. So we know that mental health issues are on the rise. Everybody knows that. That's no news. And there's just nothing out there in terms of a formalized program around that. So we're working with psychologists here in Singapore to integrate physical fitness into their psychotherapy and their therapeutic options. And so each gym will have their own link to a psychologist. We're making our members aware of that. So the conversation's very normalized around mental health. We're doing some training with the coaches and the gym managers to be able to spot signs, to be able to front foot those types of conversations. And essentially that's what Spartans Mind will be. It'll be these three arms that each gym is aware of and become central to the Spartans offering.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think for me, right, this notion of, you're more articulate than me, quintessential is the word that I would have liked to pick up on before. These areas that we're talking about, right? So like youth at risk, that's obviously a particular area, and ex-offenders, right? So these are, I guess, groups of the community where you could say, okay, well, I can see how a sport like boxing may lend itself to that particular demographic, right? And you know, just for disclosure and from a personal standpoint, these areas for me that are close to the heart, you know, people that I've grown up with, have done and are still doing time. So to be able to set up programs that can potentially help people that I know, you know, that's really powerful and important for me, and kids as well, right? You know, I've got 4 boys of my own. So trying to normalize mental health conversations in a manner that makes it accessible for people, with also no stigma attached around it. I think boxing gyms have got a really powerful place to play there. So I think this whole sort of area in ex-offenders and youth at risk is interesting, but the parts that you're talking about, which really kind of broaden that conversation, so optimize, right? This is for people who, I guess, relates to the area that you've been involved in for most of your career, right?
Correct.
High performance,
right?
And high performance doesn't have to be, I don't have to be an elite level athlete to want to be a high performer, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that really opens it up. So that for me is really interesting, and I think that's where this gets really powerful.
Yeah, and I mean, people are keeping a lot of biological markers. They're not taking a lot of psychological markers. And so what we're looking to do is have all of our members start to take psychological markers and start to correlate that with their gym attendance, with some of their other, initiatives that we've got that we'll keep under wraps, but are thinking about around how the programming all works, and start to then optimize people's programs to optimize their mental health. If we can get to that sort of phase, then we're really breaking new ground.
Yeah, and so maybe I just want to jump in there, perhaps for people that are watching this. So when we talk about psychological markers, right? Like what, if I'm just the average guy off the street, what would be the sorts of things, the markers that you would want to be looking at,
right,
so that people can just get a basic idea of, you know, how am I feeling? You know?
Yeah, sure. And it's interesting because it's a lot of it's subjective. You know, it's not like the biological markers like heart rate, heart variability, your heart variability, sleep, those types of things, which are very stress quantitative. Exactly. This is far more subjective. And there's 3 sort of areas that psychologists have really landed on in terms of good markers for psychological well-being. One is how focused we are. When we start to lose focus, our ability to concentrate is less. That's usually a good sign that something's a little amiss.
Right.
And what we need with all of these is to have some baseline measures so that people start to measure where they're at on sort of, again, on a subjective scale. And and then we can see changes over time. And that's what we want for all of our members, so that we've got this baseline measure, and then we can see, hold on, your ability to focus is starting to drop.
Sure.
And then we're able to start to intervene, and we can start to say, okay, are you, the intervention includes training that they can do on any one of these different areas. And of course, we'll have these relationships with psychologists in the area.
Yep.
So focus is one. Another one is how calm we feel during the day.
Yep.
We know what it feels like to be calm. People will call this stress. They'll call it lots of other terms. But again, we want to have a baseline measure of calmness and then see how that fluctuates.
Yep.
And then the other one is energy levels.
Yeah.
So if our energy levels start to drop, then we're starting to recognize, hold on, again, this is a psychological warning. Our brain is very complex. When we're talking about the brain, we're talking about 80 billion odd neurons, 100,000, 100 trillion sort of synapses, different relationships between it all. It's a very complex mechanism. We know we're beginning to break new ground in neuroscience, but we're still at the very early days, of a lot of that. I think that in the future, these psychological markers will become as important as biological markers, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And we may have other ways of measuring them rather than subjective, but at the moment that's the best that we've got, and we don't want to make it overly complex for people. As we, in sort of deciding what app to run with, we looked at a whole lot of other other solutions which were excessively complex.
Yeah.
And people won't use them if it's.
Are you talking about the ones where we had to measure wrist size?
Correct.
There was a whole raft of things that we needed to do with a few of them.
Correct.
They were complex, to say the least.
Correct. And so that's not going to be used by members. We also have to make it affordable. So there's a lot of things that go into designing an intervention of this sort, and we want to keep it contained. Like, we've got these 3 arms, we've got these initiatives under these arms. We're not going to go broader than that at this stage. What we ultimately want to do is get that data and start to correlate that data.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I mean, for me, when I hear you talk about those mental health markers, right, and I guess for people that are watching this, when you start to think about it like that, like, if I'm just a layman on the street who's never entertained these conversations, and I go, oh geez, I'm really not focused at work today, or my energy levels are really low. Probably my first reaction wouldn't be to say, hey, maybe there's something up, whatever it may be, things going on in my life or whatever else. Even just having knowledge of just those 3 markers can just change the way a person is thinking about themselves, right?
Absolutely. That's why the idea with any of these types of apps is you register yourself in daily, and then you've got a daily check-in. It's a simple check-in, chung, chung, chung. And if you do that on a daily basis, then you're having that daily conversation with yourself.
And I think it's probably worth making mention to the partner and the app that we're working with now, with the partnership that you've set up.
So Rebecca has basically set this all up, Evexia, and she's running a complete wellness solution. Part of that is her app, Singapore based, which makes our life a lot easier as well. And we're sort of the first cab off the rank. We're doing a pilot at the moment with Taising, and after that pilot, we'll roll it out to all of the gyms. We've got a seminar tonight, Rebecca and I, for the people on that pilot. So
and I think just on YouTube, I think in the comment section we'll just provide details of the app. Spartans members will get access to that to the app as part of this project. And I think that's great to be able to introduce it. I also, because you and I again came up with this at an after hours time. Let's have a little bit of a chat about the Spartans Mind Corner in the gym, right? Because I think that's also a way to change the conversation.
Absolutely. So what we're looking at is, and we haven't sort of fully finish this. This is still work in progress, but the idea will be to have a tablet in the gyms, so that people who, for whatever reason, don't have their phone, they can go on, they can do their recordings after their workout. They'll have on that corner, there'll also be other interventions that they can go to. On the Spartans Mind website, we're building up a blog library of various topics, everything from trauma to self-esteem to the idea of choking under pressure, all of these sorts of things. People can take the time to read it. Again, it's just centralizing that whole mental health conversation as part of what the Spartans offering is. Yeah,
absolutely. If you have an opportunity to read through the blogs as and when they come out, I highly recommend that you do, or if you're watching this later and the blogs are already out, they've been put together by Dr. Paul himself. I have read a number of them and they've just been fantastic. I guess just for bringing those conversations to front of mind, the stuff that you're talking about. Paul just mentioned the one about choking. If you're ever doing anything in a sports or high pressure environment, the science behind choking is fascinating. Look, the blogs is another resource for you to be able to tap into. I probably also want to talk about changing gears a little bit. Moving away from optimize. I want to talk a little bit about Project Grit. So that's obviously ready to kick off. This will be time-stamped for people watching it later, but mid-November 2022 is when these programs launch. And the first round of those geared towards, as we've spoken about quite a bit, it's the youth at risk demographic. Do you just want to talk a little bit about Project Grit, partners involved, and just, I guess, the program?
Sure. So with Project Grit, this is the project that we're doing is with Impart, so with Naresh and his team. And we're running this, as Russ said, kicks off November the 12th. This has two components. It has a group therapy component where they're working through the Future Selves program, and then a boxing component. So we figure we'll get them for the group therapy first, and then
debate on which way that should have went.
That's right. But then give them the boxing as a reward. And we got a full house for that. That'll be broken up. We'll do 6 sessions this year, 6 sessions next year. We want to run this program probably twice a year. And that becomes our youth program. We've got sponsors in terms of the assessments that they'll be going through.
And again, I guess just in the comments, we'll just add in the details for Impart SG. And again, I think it's worthwhile highlighting the unsung heroes, people that are doing a lot of great work in this space. And we've mentioned his name a number of times. But anybody that is in and around youth social work in Singapore will know of Naresh, sometimes referred to as Batman. There's a story behind that. He can tell it. But, it's really a privilege for us to be able to work with people that are doing such great work in this area, but also to be able to bring somebody of the caliber of Dr. Paul into those programs. And so we bring in someone with the background such as Dr. Paul, and somebody with the passion and hard work and dedication as Naresh, and then something pretty cool and impactful like boxing. And I think that's a recipe for something really great in this space.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, Naresh does a lot of really good social work. I think he understands mental health from a holistic perspective, understanding that we need to deal with social issues at the same time. And that makes him an ideal partner of choice with respect to this. And he's very much on board. He's seen the benefits of boxing directly. He's got some great success stories. Actually, his blog will go out again. This is time stamped, but his blog will go out this week or next week. The first one in November. Just again covering some of those success stories. And we're aiming to be the ambulance at the top of the cliff rather than the ambulance at the bottom.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to spring a few things on you that we hadn't discussed or weren't prepared for, not time stamped. So we're going to move away completely from the conversation around mental health and wellness and Spartan's mind, and we're going to talk some general boxing.
Yeah.
All right. Your favourite boxer of all time?
Sugar Ray Leonard.
Sugar Ray Leonard. All right. Very good.
Yeah.
And in your opinion of the modern day, so again, this is timestamped, it's 2022, modern day boxers.
Yeah.
Who's the pound for pound king right now?
Pound for pound king.
Or queen.
Yeah.
King or queen.
Yeah. Yeah. So queen, I'd say Clarissa.
Yep. Clarissa Shields.
Clarissa Shields. King, I think I'm looking forward to this Lomachenko Haney with
right.
If that sort of kicks off. I can never get his name right. The current pound for pound from Japan, what's his name?
Inui,
yes. I think is great to watch.
The monster.
Yeah, the monster.
Yeah,
just power. He's got the power of a much bigger man.
Absolutely.
And I think he's great to watch. So that would be my pick.
It's a good list.
The ones at
it's
the
a
moment.
good list.
Yeah.
There's a smorgasbord at the moment in current boxing.
Yeah.
I think we're pretty spoiled. I noticed that Jake Paul didn't come up on your list at all. Then.
No, he's a little bit further. He's a little bit further down. I saw your LinkedIn post yesterday. And I think that's an interesting question.
Yeah. So look, why don't we pose it? And if it wants to get the comment section on our YouTube video rattling as well. So the question that was posed from Box Raw, who are one of our partners, incidentally. Was about Jake Paul, and essentially, is he good or bad for boxing?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. No one's asking, but I'll give my 2 cents worth.
Yeah.
So I think my comment went something along the lines of the boxing purist in me says that he's bad for boxing. So I think he's got absolutely no right to be calling out people like Canelo.
Yeah.
Beating a 47-year-old Anderson Silva, ex-MMA fighter who's long since hung up the gloves, hardly qualifies you as a real fighter. However, this is where it gets complicated. The boxing business entrepreneur in me says that guys like Jake Paul are great for the sport because they're bringing eyes onto this sport that probably were never on it, and especially in the younger generation. Whether the kids are looking at the sport through the right lens is a different thing.
Yeah.
So I'm torn, but I think if I had to take a pick, I would say he is better for the sport.
Sure.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think that everyone in the know doesn't take the boxing too seriously. But I think that he's shining a light on boxing, not only in terms of boxing, but also a way of achieving your dreams. He always talks about that. And I think that he's made boxing popular.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, like we said before, there's a lot of entry points for boxing. And there's a lot of place for it's spread the love for what boxing is.
Yep.
And, hopefully people will look at that and then start to, look at following some of the more credible boxers. But no, I think it's all good. I have zero problem with Jake Paul.
You have zero problem with the problem child?
I have zero problem with the problem child, yeah.
All right, fantastic. So look, I would encourage anybody that wants to know more about Spartan's Mind and any of the programs that we're running to reach out to Dr. Paul. It's paul@spartansboxing.com, or you can look us up on a website, spartansmind.com.
Yep.
And yeah, I just wanted to thank you for sitting down and having a chat today about this and giving people a little bit of a background.
Great. No, look, thank you. I mean, it's a great opportunity. I think it's really important that this is just part, obviously, of what we do. And we're a boxing gym first and foremost. Our focus is on the boxing programs and the routines and getting people fit and all of these things. But we've just got this added piece to the puzzle, and we're the only gym in town to have that. So I think it's a privilege to put that down as something that I've been able to get involved with. So thank you.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Thanks, guys. So this is Spartans Community TV. If you haven't had a chance to look at any of the previous episodes, there's some fantastic guests, local celebrities like Sheik Heikel, Charlie Lim, international athletes, guys such as former IBF world champ Richie Comey, the Maloney brothers from Australia, so some boxers and a whole host of other very interesting everyday people. So check it out, Spartans Community TV. If you want to find us anywhere, you can check out spartansboxing.com, or you can look us up on any of our socials. It's Boxing Spartans is the handle for most of those. We look forward to seeing you. We'll probably be launching one of these episodes per month to begin with. If there's anybody that you know of that you think is interesting, who we should be talking to, boxing related, mental health related, or otherwise, please drop us a note in the comments section. Thanks again.
Thank you.